vanished on New Year's Day without a single trace. But the digital breadcrumbs, chilling Google searches, blood-stained tools, and a husband who admitted disposing of her body would soon turn the case into America's most unsettling missing person mystery. On January 1st, 2023, in Cohasset, Massachusetts, an affluent Boston suburb, Ana Walshe, 39, was last seen alive. That night, she and her husband, Brian, had spent New Year's Eve at home with a friend. The next morning, Ana was nowhere to be found. Brian told authorities Ana flew to Washington, D.C. that morning for a work emergency. But investigations found no record she boarded any flight, and her credit cards, phone, and usual patterns of activity went silent for January 1st onward. On January 4th, 2023, when she failed to show up at work, Ana's employer reported her missing. What started as a missing person case rapidly evolved into a full-blown murder investigation after investigators uncovered evidence contradicting Brian's explanation. Authorities discovered on Brian's electronic devices, including devices shared with his children, disturbing internet searches made around the time of Ana's disappearance. Queries like how to dispose of a body, how long before a body smells, and can you be charged with murder without a body? Prosecutors presented this as evidence of premeditation and planning. Investigators found trash bags, later traced back to dumpsters, that contained, among other items, a hatchet, a hacksaw, cleaning supplies, and what appeared to be personal belongings of Ana, including her purse, boots, and even her COVID-19 vaccination card. Forensic testing reportedly matched Ana's DNA on several of these items. Authorities allege some of the items also had mixed DNA, both Ana's and Brian's, supporting a narrative of concealment and cleanup rather than accidental death. When first questioned, Brian provided shifting narratives about where he had been and what happened. On January 8, 2023, he was arrested on charges of misleading investigators after discrepancies emerged, including failure to confirm his claimed errands and transactions. By January 18, 2023, prosecutors formally charged him with murder and unlawful disposal of a human body. At the time of her disappearance, Ana reportedly held a substantial life insurance policy, reported at up to $2.7 million, naming Brian as sole beneficiary. Court filings and media reporting indicate prosecutors believe Brian suspected Ana of having an affair, a theory supported by evidence that Brian had hired a private investigator to follow and surveil Ana in the period before she vanished. Additionally, Brian was already convicted in a separate art fraud case involving fake Warhol paintings at the time of Ana's disappearance, reportedly facing restitution of nearly $500,000, a financial burden that may have added pressure. On January 8, 2023, Brian was first arrested for misleading investigators. He was later indicted on first-degree murder, along with charges of improper disposal of a body and misleading the police. On November 18, 2025, just before jury selection, Brian pleaded guilty to the two lesser charges, disposing of a body and misleading police, but not guilty to the murder charge. This kept the murder trial on course. Jury selection was completed, and opening statements in the murder trial began in December 2025. Prosecutors presented their case, asserting they will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Brian murdered and dismembered his wife. If convicted on a murder charge, Brian could face life in prison without parole. No body has ever been recovered. Despite the evidence of disposal, authorities have not publicly located Ana's remains. That raises important questions about whether physical evidence alone, though substantial, is sufficient for a murder conviction without a body. Brian's attorneys argue this was not a planned murder. In court, they claimed Ana died from a sudden, unexplained death on that January morning. In that moment of panic, Brian allegedly made a terrible decision to hide the death rather than report it, because he feared authorities wouldn't believe him and because their 3 young children were asleep. Mental health and trial delays. Ahead of the trial, there have been procedural complications, including a mental competency evaluation following a jailhouse incident in 2025. Because of these complications, missing body conflicting narratives, and forensic, circumstantial evidence. The case is a complicated test of modern investigative methods and legal standards. This is Crime Lens, where every detail matters.